Hare Krishna, Dandat Pranam to all the Vaishnavas listening to me. Today we will continue from the fifth question of the chapter Impure Vaishnavas from Sambandh section. Before that, let us offer our prayers at the lotus feet of Srila Gurudev and all our previous acharyas. Om Agyantimirandhasya Jnananjana Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधाकांत नमोस्तुते तत्कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितनाम पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So the fifth question is, are the Ramanandis pure Vaishnavas? Answer is, one who desires to attain liberation can never be considered a pure Vaishnava. Since Ram Das of the Ramanandi Sampradaya was a worshipper of Lord Rama, he was Vaishnav Praya or almost a Vaishnava. In those days, no one could distinguish between a pure Vaishnava and a pseudo Vaishnava. However, Sri Ramadasa, who was born in a Kayastha family, was known as a Vaishnava because he worshipped Lord Ramachandra. 28th chapter is Householder Vaishnavas. This is the next chapter. It is called Householder Vaishnava. First question is, who is a real householder? In whose house should a pure Vaishnava accept prasada? Answer is, one who chants 1 million holy names of the Lord every day is a real householder. A pure Vaishnava should take prasada in his house. Second question is, what are the general characteristics of the renunciates and the householders? Answer is, persons who are filled with the attachment for material enjoyment can never tolerate the urges of the genitals. Many of them engage in illicit activities. Those who thirst for devotional service are divided into two groups. Those whose attraction has been purified by the strength of sadhu sangha give up the association of women altogether and continually engage in devotional service. Persons in this group are known as renounced Vaishnavas. Those whose propensity for associating with women has not been destroyed accept the code of marriage and remain as householders while engaging in devotional service. Third question is, how should a Vaishnava householder behave with his wife and children? Answer is, a Vaishnava householder should get his wife initiated into the Vaishnava religion and, as far as possible, teach her the science of Vaishnavism. If one enhances the world of Vaishnavas by the assistance of one's Vaishnava wife, one no longer indulges in discussing material topics. A Vaishnava householder should consider his children servants of the Supreme Lord. Fourth question is the instruction to control the 6 urges meant for householders? Answer is, a self-realized person who is able to conquer the 6 urges can conquer the entire world. The instructions to tolerate the urges are only meant for the householder devotees because the renunciates have already achieved perfection in this regard. They have left their house. Fifth question is, how should the householder Vaishnavas maintain their life? Answer is, the householder Vaishnavas should always refrain from the sinful activities and after earning money through proper means, they should maintain their family, which belongs to Krishna. The character of the renunciate Vaishnavas should particularly become pure. Sixth question is, how can the householder best use their earnings? Answer is, Those who earn a healthy amount of money can spend some of it to pay tax to the government and some of it to maintain their families. In this way, they can save whatever surplus money they have. They should spend the accumulated money for religious activities. There are various types of improper spending, such as using money to eat meat, drink wine, engage in useless court cases, give charity to unqualified persons, and to go to the cinema and theatre. Those who wish to become the servants of Sriman Mahaprabhu should not use their surplus money in sinful activities. They should use it in for a good cause. Apart from serving a guest, educating a student, giving medicine to a sick person, feeding a poor or distressed person, and relieving a poor person from the responsibility of his daughter's marriage, there is a more important way to properly use one's accumulated money. One should spend one's money in the service of the Supreme Lord and his devotees. The duty of householder Vaishnavas is to donate some portion of their surplus money for the smooth running of the daily service of the Lord. Seventh question is, why should the householders serve guests? Answer is, serving guests is the principal duty of the householders. Any country where this principle is absent is as good as a desert and should be rejected. The lives of householders who do not entertain guests are useless and are in the lead among sinful people. Serving guests is a must for householders. The inevitable sinful activities that a householder commits are destroyed simply by serving guests. Eighth question is, should a Vaishnava householder discriminate between an ordinary guest and a Vaishnava guest? Answer is, whenever a devotee householder receives a guest, he examines whether the guest is an ordinary guest or a Vaishnava guest. If he has a Vaishnava guest, then he exhibits more affection to his guest than to his own brother. He serves his guest properly and tries to enhance his own devotional service by associating with such a guest. If he receives an ordinary guest, he serves him to the best of his ability, according to the worldly etiquettes. Such is the behavior of a Vaishnava householder. Ninth question is, what is the principal activity of a householder? Answer is, the principal activity of a householder is to serve the devotees of the Lord. 10th question is, when should a householder become attentive? Answer is, a Vaishnava householder should take special care in associating with saintly persons. 11th question is, what ideal example should a Vaishnava householder follow? Answer is, why should they give up the desire for material enjoyment? The Vaishnava householders should build their character following in the footsteps of Mahaprabhu and his associates. The behavior that the Lord and his devotees personally display in earning their livelihood and maintaining their lives should be totally imitated by the householder devotees. To engage in activities with a desire to please Krishna is always good. On the other hand, if they engage in activities with the desire of sense gratification and to obtain irrelevant results, they become materialists. 12th question is, what are the other activities of a Vaishnava householder? Answer is, a Vaishnava householder should offer respect to Tulsi. 13th question is, should a Vaishnava householder collect more than necessary? Answer is, the Vaishnava householders should accumulate as much wealth as they require to maintain their devotional life. If they accumulate more than that, they will be at fault for accumulating too much. Persons who endeavor to worship the Lord should give up this habit of the materialists. 14th question is, should a Vaishnava householder endeavor hard for his food and clothes? Answer is, a Vaishnava householder should feel happy with whatever food and clothing he easily gets. 15th question is, with what kind of Vaishnavas should a Vaishnava householder hold a festival? Answer is, a Vaishnava householder should respect other Vaishnavas and he should take shelter at the lotus feet of the superior as well as the topmost Vaishnavas. He should hold festivals in the company of such Vaishnavas. 16th question is, in which subject should a householder remain particularly careful? Answer is, a householder should remain extremely careful not to commit offences against the Vaishnavas. 17th question is, should a devotee become a sannyasi or a householder? Answer is, for a devotee to remain householder or to become a sannyasi is the same thing. 18th question is, what is the position of a householder? Should one remain a householder forever? Answer is, the position of the householder is like a school for living entity to learn and awaken the science of the self. 19th question is, can a householder award one sannyasa? Answer is, one should take sannyasa only from a renounced Vaishnava. Since a devotee householder has not relished the behavior of a renunciate, he should not give sannyas to anyone. With this we complete 28th chapter and move on to 29th chapter, which is called, Who is Paramahamsa? First question is, who is a Paramahamsa? Answer is, the self-realized devotee is a real Paramahamsa. Second question is, who are the real Paramahamsas in the past times of Sri Gaura and in ancient times? Answer is, pure exalted devotees such as Srivasa Pandit, Sri Pundarika Vidyanidhi and Sri Ramananda Rai were real Paramahamsas. In ancient times, many personalities like Ribhu were real Paramahamsas, even though they were householders. Third question is, what is the definition of a Paramahamsa? Which literature do Paramahamsas study? Answer is, those who have divine eyes consider a Paramahamsa to be an equipoised yogi, and those who are less intelligent or third class consider a Paramahamsa to be attached to material enjoyment. Some people may occasionally even consider a Paramahamsa to be opposed to the Lord. A swan-like person can identify another swan-like brother who possesses all the appropriate symptoms, whether they are from the same country or not. Although their dress, language, worship, deity and behavior may appear different, they freely address each other as brother. These type of people are called Paramahamsas, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the scripture for these Paramahamsas. Fourth question is, are the Paramahamsas bound by the rules and regulations of the scriptures? Answer is, whatever rules and regulations people of a lower level follow, the great personalities of the higher level follow, simply as their independent pastimes. Fifth question is, whose association do the Paramahamsas reject? Answer is, there is so much difference between the fruitive workers and the devotees who engage in pious religious activities. What to speak of karmis who are devoid of devotional service to Krishna? Taking shelter of pure devotional service, the devotees who engage in pious religious activities spend their lives in serving the Vaishnavas and chanting the Lord's holy names. Within their hearts, they are indifferent to fruitive activities and they follow the principles of Varnashrama Dharma because they know that it is favorable to devotional service. Although temporary and casual activities are often obstacles on the path of devotional service, devotees engage in them only as much as they need to maintain their livelihood without committing any sin. Therefore, they are always indifferent to such activities. Fruitive workers think that action is the cause of their deliverance, and they have no interest in activities in relationship with Krishna. They remain neutral both in happiness and distress in relationship with Krishna, and teach the people of the world about mundane fruitive activities. Even though they follow the Vedas, they blaspheme the impartial mature yogis and misguide people by claiming their own conclusion is the Vaishnava conclusion. Foolish people are bewildered by such propaganda, and thus they are ruined because of narrow-mindedness, and they make arguments with the impartial mature yogis. The followers of the Vedas do not understand the hearts of the perfect yogis, but they accept the mundane fruitive workers as great personalities and deal with them accordingly. The swan-like pure devotees who know that the mundane followers of the Vedas are non-devotees and do not associate with them. Sixth question is, who is the most glorious person in the world? Answer is, the swan-like devotees who are expert in discriminating between matter and spirit are glorious persons in the world. Only the devotees are learned because they have surpassed the ocean of illusion in the material world. Only the devotees are full of good qualities because they have attained the platform of pure goodness, surpassing the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Only the devotees are happy because they have attained the transcendental happiness of Vraja, surpassing the happiness and distress of the material world. Only the devotees are fearless because they have become the inhabitants of Goloka, surpassing material time, which consists of past and future. May the devotees live forever and benefit unfortunate persons who are tortured by Maya, which gives them her audience, associates with them, and converses with them. With that, we finish 29th chapter and move on to 30th chapter, which is called The Preacher. First question is, who is more beneficial to the world? Those who performed bhajana in a solitary place or those who preached the holy name of Hari? Answer is, a preacher of the holy name following the example of saintly persons is more beneficial to the world than devotees who neglect the preaching work by becoming absorbed in the bliss of their own bhajana according to their inclinations. Second question is, who is qualified to preach? Answer is, only devotees who possess full knowledge of pure devotional service and who relish the mellows of offenseless chanting of the Lord's holy names are qualified to preach. Third question is, can anyone become a preacher if he is an expert speaker? Answer is, the responsibility of preaching is better entrusted to those who are engaged in performing bhajana. Simply being an expert speaker does not qualify one to preach the teachings of Gauranga. Fourth question is it necessary for a preacher to know the signs of offences against the chanting of the holy name? Answer is, the preacher should certainly know the offences against the chanting of the Lord's holy name. If they know this, they will become qualified preachers of the holy name. In the course of preaching the holy names, they should instruct everyone to always remain careful to avoid committing offences against the chanting of the holy name. Otherwise, the preachers will themselves become offenders to the holy name. Fifth question is, what does one require for pure preaching work? Answer is, to preach purely, one should first chant the Lord's holy name in a pure systematic way. Second, one should maintain one's purity. And third, the audience should be pure. To chant the Lord's holy name in a pure systematic way means that the holy names should be indicative of the Lord's pastimes and free from fruitive activities and mental speculation. Sixth question is, why does a preacher need to be exemplary? Answer is, when saintly people follow religious principles, this is called achara, proper code of conduct. To preach those religious principles to other living entities in the world is called prachara, preaching. If one wants to engage in the activities of achara or prachara, one should first learn the saintly person's code of conduct. Some people, after learning, begin to preach even before they themselves follow. Hence, they yield insufficient results. If one does not personally follow the religious principles but preaches to others, he creates a great deal of disturbance in the world. Seventh question is, can the Smartas become preachers of the devotional service? Answer is, some people do not practice pure devotional service themselves. Rather, they follow the doctrine of the Smartas, which is based on Karma Kanda. The science of devotional service that they instruct is totally opposed to the scriptures. To preach first, one should follow. Eighth question is, why is it necessary for a preacher to become pure? Answer is, for preachers to become pure is extremely necessary. Singing the holy names is found everywhere, but when we go to hear them, we feel extremely sorry to see the impurity of the singers. Either they are chanting the holy names to stop the spread of disease in the village, or they are chanting the holy names out of fear of Yamaraja. Such chanting, which comes from the heart that is polluted by thirst for liberation and material enjoyment, is the perverted reflection of the holy names. To achieve the eternal auspiciousness by such chanting is impossible. If the shopkeepers and vendors give up such desires, they can preach the pure holy names. If, however, they chant the holy names with a desire to either accumulate money or name and fame, the very purpose of opening the marketplace for distributing the Lord's holy name will not be fulfilled. Ninth question is, are pure preachers responsible for the result of their preaching? When their preaching is pervertly reflected in the living entities who are inclined towards material enjoyment? Answer is, the reformers, out of their universal love and anxiety for good work, endeavor by some means or other to make the thoughtless drink the cup of salvation, but latter drink it with wine and fall to the ground under the influence of intoxication. For imagination has the power of making a thing what it never was. Thus, it is that the evils of nunneries and corruptions to aksharas proceed. No, we are not to scandalize the Saviour of Jerusalem or the Saviour of Nadia for those subsequent evils. Luthers, instead of critics, are what we want for the correction of those evils by the true interpretation of the original precepts. With that, we complete 30th chapter and move on to 31st chapter, which is called Science. First question is, what is the principal cause of heat? Answer is, by mixing metals like iron and sulfur, mountains are broken. The earth shakes and ammunition is released from guns to create havoc in the world. Where is the inspiration of the consciousness in these activities? Although heat is seen as the principal cause of all movement, yet without the inspiration of the spirit, nothing can happen. If we scrutinizingly study what is this heat, we come to know that heat is a quality. When a particular propensity becomes active within one's body, heat manifests in the body. It is well known that if one is excessively lusty, his body temperature increases. It is to be known that heat, which is experienced in all kinds of material objects, is the result of the interaction of spirit. Second question is, are reason and argument the cause of scientific discoveries? Is human nature satisfied by remaining entangled in sensual knowledge? Answer is, in mental and material science is discovered through reasoning. Material science is of many kinds: science of matter and motion, magnetism, electricity, medicine, physiology, optics, music, logic, and mental philosophy. Art and manufacture are the part of science of the quality and the energy of objects. Science and art together create huge enterprises in the world. Ships, railways, buildings, and electrical items are the products of sensual knowledge. Geography, chronology, and astronomy are products of sensual knowledge. Zoology, mineralogy, and surgery are also products of sensual knowledge. Those who wish to remain entangled in this knowledge call it positive knowledge. Since human nature does not want to remain confined only to sensual positive knowledge, people try to attain higher and higher knowledge. Third question is, what is science according to swan-like personalities? Answer is, according to the Vaishnavas, proper use of material knowledge in science. Those who are engaged in advancing in material knowledge, being induced by mundane desires, indirectly help the spiritual advancement of Vaishnavas to some extent. Fourth question is, in which religion is the full cultivation of spiritual science available? Answer is, the science of bhakti is not found in modern religions. Sanatan Dharma is evolved from Aryan culture, and Vaishnavism is the best part of Sanatan Dharma. Therefore, the science of bhakti is only possible in Vaishnavism. In Jiva Goswami's Sat Sandarbha and Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, the science of bhakti is particularly expounded. Fifth question is, in whose service should science be used to benefit the world? Answer is, the duty of the artist and the scientist is to serve the knower of the absolute truth with their advanced art and science. The science of the self is extremely confidential. Those people who are engaged in discussing such topics have no time to entangle themselves in ordinary art and science. Others should therefore try to help maintain those people. O brothers, O believers of gradual advancement, O believers of gradual discovery, please mind your own business, and as a result, you and the whole world will be benefited. Do not cause unauthorized interference and try to find faults and qualities in science of the self. If you act like gentlemen, we will constantly bless you. Sixth question is, when do science, society and art reach their highest stage? Answer is, when karma works under the subordination of bhakti, it is no longer identified as karma but as bhakti. As long as karma is identified by its own name, it tries to become equal to bhakti. The advancement of science, society and art are the acts of karma. But when the karma is transformed into bhakti, then science, society and art becomes bright and advanced. Seventh question is, in which scientific knowledge is the swan-like Vaishnavas expert? Answer is, books on physical and mental science, books on industry, books on languages, books on grammar and books on poetry are known as Arthashastra. Some physical, mental, familial and social benefits are obtained from these writings. The name of these benefits is Artha. The advantage of these books is that by studying medicine, one can get the benefit of cure. By studying music, one can get the benefit of happiness to the mind and ears. By material scientific knowledge, various wonderful machines are created. By astrology, one can get the benefit of understanding subjects like proper and improper times. Those who study such Arthashastras are known as Arthvid scholars. The Smriti Shastra establishes Varnashram Dharma and are also known as Arthashastra. The Smarta scholars are also known as Arthvid scholars because the main purpose of their occupational duties is to protect society. Spiritual scholars practice spiritual life with scriptures, with these arthas. Swan-like Vaishnavas are never opposed to discussing these scriptures. They extract the supreme goal of spiritual life from these Arthashastras and become worshipable among Arthvid scholars. The Arthvid scholars are happy to assist them in ascertaining the absolute truth. The swan-like Vaishnavas are present in the battlefield as negotiators. They do not hate or reject various sinful persons. Swan-like Vaishnavas are always engaged in purifying the hearts of sinful people by giving public lectures, friendly advice and confidential instructions, and by rebuking, setting an example and sometimes punishing sinners. With that, we complete 31st chapter and move on to 32nd chapter, which is called Philosophy. First question is, how is the material, metaphysical and spiritual science divided? Answer is, according to their qualifications, living entities in the world are divided into three categories: mundane, metaphysical and spiritual. People say that philosophy is of 6 kinds, but we have divided it into 3 categories. Material philosophy exists in Nyaya, Vaisesika and Purva Mimamsa. Metaphysical philosophy consists of Sankhya, Patanjali, and Mayavada. Commentary on Vedanta Sutra. Spiritual philosophy consists of the Vedanta himself. Second question is, where is the synthesis of various philosophies preached by different acharyas? Answer is, the philosophies such as Kevaladvaita Vada, which is exclusive monism, Kevaladvaita Vada, exclusive dualism, Dvaita Advaita Vada, monism and dualism, Visishta Advaita Vada, specific monism, and Shuddha Advaita Vada, purified monism. Quarrel for the sake of the name only. The supreme truth which remains after the isms is different philosophies, is the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda, inconceivable oneness and difference. The Vedas are the great authorities approve this spiritual philosophy. Third question is, why is the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda complete? Answer is, in this book Sarvasam Badini, Sri Jiva Goswami has established this philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda as the ultimate conclusion. The Dvaita Dvaita philosophy propounded by Sri Nimbakara was not complete. However, Vaishnav world accepted this philosophy as perfect, though the teachings of Sriman Mahaprabhu. Since the acceptance of the Lord's eternal Satchidanand form found in Sri Madhava Sampradaya is the main principle of the Achintya Bheda Bheda philosophy, Sriman Mahaprabhu has accepted the Madhva Sampradaya. Since there are some little scientific differences in the conclusions of the previous Vaishnava Acharyas, different Sampradayas have come into being. By the strength of his omniscience, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has fulfilled the deficiencies of the different philosophies. He made the philosophies and conclusions of Sri Madhava, Sri Ramanuja, Sri Vishwaswami, and Sri Nimbakara faultless and perfect. And mercifully gave everyone in the world his pure conclusion of Chaitanya Bheda Bheda. Fourth question is the conclusion of Achintya Bheda Bheda based on the Vedas and on universal philosophical conclusions? Answer is, since the philosophies of Kevalavada, Shuddhadvaita and Visistadvaita consist of partial statements of the Vedic literature. They are opposed to the remaining parts. Philosophy of the Achintya Bheda Bheda is universal, and it is the actual purport of the Vedas. It is the object of the living entities and constitutional faith, and saintly persons accept it. Fifth question is, why is the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda accepted by everyone? Answer is, the conclusion of Achintya Bheda Bheda is based on devotional scriptures. The more one discusses it with reasoning, the more one will find it pure and perfect. Arguments are of two kinds: arguments to support one's own side and arguments to defeat one's opposition. The Vedas, the Puranas, and the conclusions of the Mahajanas nourish the Achintya Bheda Bheda philosophy. They are arguments to support this philosophy. Sri Shankaracharya and other dry speculators are opposed to this philosophy. Sri Shankara has said, O Lord, when the difference between you and me is removed, I will remain yours, but I cannot say that you are mine. Such opposing arguments also nourish the Achintya Bheda Bheda philosophy. Everyone therefore accepts this conclusion. Sixth question is, why is the word Achintya inconceivable used in the conclusion of Achintya Bheda Bheda? Answer is, the truth has been established. The living entities are simultaneously one with and different from the Krishna, and the material world is also simultaneously one with and different from Krishna. Since limited human reasoning cannot comprehend it, this eternal truth of simultaneously oneness and difference has been called Achintya. Seventh question is the philosophy of Keval Advaita Vada non-dual knowledge, and is it approved by the Vedas? Answer is, many people think that the philosophy of Advaita Vada is Advaya Jnana or non-dual knowledge, but this is not a fact. The philosophy of Keval Advaita Vada is opposed to the Vedas. The philosophy of oneness is established by many places in the Vedas, and the philosophy of eternal separation is also established in many places in the Vedas. Vedic literature is perfect knowledge. Therefore, there is no possibility of any contradiction. The Vedas conclude that simultaneous oneness and differences are eternal and perfect. Because of the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Brahman, thus the material world and the living entities are simultaneously one with and different from the Supreme Brahman. Dvaita and Advaita are simultaneously a fact. Therefore, in the science of oneness, there is a difference between matter and spirit, and in the science of the self, the minute spirit souls are eternally different from the Supreme Lord. One who knows the truth of oneness and difference has nothing more to know. When one realizes the conclusion of Achintya Bheda Bheda, one automatically achieves Advaya Janana or non-dual knowledge. The living entity who is the seer cannot see anything separate from absolute truth. When he is under the control of material vision, he only sees a difference in them. Since matter is an eternally perfect element, it appears separate from the consciousness. This is called Dvaita Janana. Eighth question is, who perfected the philosophical conclusions preached by the authorized Vaishnavacharyas? Answer is, Sri Ramanujacharya preached devotional service according to the philosophy of Vishishta Advaita Vada. Sri Madhavacharya preached devotional service according to the philosophy of Shuddha Advaita Vada. Sri Nimbaditya Acharya preached the devotional service according to the philosophy of Dvaita Aditya Vada. Sri Vishnu Swami preached devotional service according to the philosophy of Shuddha Advaita Vada. All four are preachers of pure devotional service. In the opinion of Ramanuja, the Supreme Lord is one, and matter and spirit are his qualities. In the opinion of Madhava, the living entities are separate from the Supreme Lord, and devotional service to the Lord is the nature of living entities. In the opinion of Nimbaditya, the living entities are simultaneously one with and different from the Supreme Lord. Thereby, the eternity of difference is accepted. In the opinion of Vishnu Swami, the object is one, but the Supreme Brahman and the living entities are eternally different. Even though there are differences in their opinions, all of them have accepted the devotional service is eternal. The living entities are eternal servants of the Supreme Lord, and the love of God is the ultimate goal of life. Therefore, all of them are Vaishnavas. Although they were authorized Vaishnavas, their philosophies were incomplete and there are differences between them. Sri Chaitanya Deva, who is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appeared in the world and after removing these scientific imperfections, taught the people of the world scientific pure devotional service. Ninth question is the conclusion of Sri Ramanujacharya opposed by the conclusion of Gaudiyas? Answer is, the conclusions of Srimad Ramanuja Swami are like the foundations of our Gaudiya temple of love. 10th question is, are the philosophy of Sri Nimbaditya and the conclusions of Achintya Bheda Bheda the same? Answer is, many people say that the philosophy of Gaudiya Vaishnavas is identical to that of Sri Nimbaditya, but that is not true. The philosophy of Nimbaditya is Dvaita Aditya, and the Gaudiya philosophy is Achintya Bheda Bheda. 11th question is, when was philosophical literature composed? Answer is, the Darshana Shastra, philosophical scriptures, was compiled a short time after the compilation of the Mahabharata. There are 6 prominent philosophical systems current in India: Nyaya, logic; Sankhya, Patanjala, yoga; Kannada or Vaisika, Purva Mimamsa or Karma Mimamsa, and Uttara Mimamsa or Vedanta. All these philosophical systems were introduced after Buddhism. The races who propounded these systems first composed their philosophies in sutras. The Vedic sutras were compiled to facilitate easy remembrance, but this was not the case with the sutras of these philosophical systems. When the Brahmanas were attacked by the mighty Buddhist philosophy, they were first compiled the Upanishads, which are the pinnacle of Vedic literature, and thus they strengthened their doctrine with logic and argument. The Buddhists gradually presented many philosophical systems such as Saugata, Madhyamika, Yogacara. Soon afterwards, the Buddhists entered into intense debate with Brahmanas. The Brahmanas then introduced their 6 philosophical systems, beginning with Nyaya and Sankhya. They kept their teachings in the form of sutras and passed them on only to their disciples. During the time of Ramachandra, Gautam Rishi composed Anvikshiki, Vedic logic, which was accepted at that time. According to their needs, the Brahmanas composed the present system of Nyaya under Gautama's name and substituted it for the previous system. In Gautama's Shastra, there are statements that could be used against Saugata philosophy. The scriptures of Kannada come under the category of Nyaya scriptures. In the system of Sankhya, there are also many statements against Buddhism. The system of Patanjala falls under the category of Sankhya. Purva Mimamsa, propounded by Jaimini, supports the Karma Kanda system that was rejected by the Buddhists. Although Vedanta scriptures are the most recent, they have been accepted by as another form of Anvikshiki since they are based on the Upanishads. Therefore, all philosophical scriptures were written during the 800 years between 400 BC and AD 400. With that, we complete today's session. My sincere obeisances at the lotus feet of Srila Gurudev and the divine couple, Sri Sri Radha Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.